Marcus Chun stood at his post with his hands clasped behind his back and his eyes scanning the grand reception hall of Concordia Station, the neutral ground where humanity hoped to join the Galactic Coalition, something that seemed impossible just 10 years ago when Earth first made contact with alien life. The hall sparkled with bioluminescent decorations from a dozen worlds and hundreds of beings moved through the space in elegant dances of diplomacy and politics that Marcus barely understood, he was just security, a mid-level officer assigned to watch over the Earth delegation and make sure nothing went wrong during the most important week in human history. Most of the alien species barely looked at the humans, to them, Earth was nothing special, just another primitive world full of short-lived creatures who hadn't even mastered basic telepathy or energy manipulation, humans were weak in their eyes, fragile beings who died after barely a century and who still used kinetic weapons like savages. Marcus had heard the whispers and seen the dismissive glances, it stung his pride, but he kept his face neutral and his posture professional, that was what humanity needed right now, not warriors or heroes, just people who could follow orders and not embarrass their entire species. The Catherine delegation entered through the eastern archway, and the entire hall seemed to shift its attention toward them, the Catherines were old, ancient, even by galactic standards, their empire stretched across 50 star systems, and their telepathic abilities made them natural diplomats and power brokers. Princess Valathas walked at the center of her group, and Marcus found himself staring despite his training, She was tall, nearly 7 feet, with skin that seemed to shimmer with faint blue bioluminescence, her eyes were large and silver without visible pupils, and her movements carried the grace of someone who had lived for centuries. She wore robes that flowed like liquid starlight and a crown of crystalline structures that grew directly from her skull, a sign of royal blood among her people, the Catherines lived for thousands of years, and she was still considered young at just 300. Marcus forced his attention back to his duty, scanning faces and watching for anything unusual, The coalition had enemies, factions that opposed expansion and particularly opposed humanity's admission, Earth brought nothing to the table except warm bodies and stubborn determination, hardly traits that impressed beings who could manipulate matter with their mind's ambassador. Richardson was speaking with a group of insectoid Trellic representatives when Marcus noticed movement in the shadows near the northern balcony, something wasn't right, the way that Selkari diplomat had positioned himself, the subtle hand gesture to someone across the room. Marcus's pulse quickened, and his hand moved instinctively toward his weapon, Earth tech was primitive compared to energy weapons, but Aurelgan still put holes in things, He started moving along the wall, trying to get a better angle without drawing attention. Then he saw it, the shimmer of active camouflage failing for just a split second. 3 figures on the balcony above, and they were aiming something at the Catherine delegation. Marcus didn't think, thinking took time, and time meant death, he ran. Their assassins fired, and phase blades materialized in the air, nearly invisible distortions that could slice through almost any matter by shifting it partially out of phase with normal space, They were silent and deadly, and aimed directly at Princess Vela. That's Marcus slammed into the princess from the side with all his weight and momentum, She was taller and probably stronger, but he had surprise and desperation on his side, They went down together in a tangle of limbs and flowing robes. The pain hit him like fire and ice combined, A phase blade had caught him across the chest and abdomen, cutting deep through his security armor and into flesh beneath, human blood didn't clot like Catherine. Blood, didn't seal wounds automatically like Trellic Ichor, it just poured out hot and red and far too fast. Alarms were screaming, and security forces from a dozen species were converging on the balcony, Marcus could hear shouting in languages he didn't understand and the distinctive crack of energy weapons discharging, but all of that seemed distant and unimportant. Princess Velithas pushed herself up from beneath him, and her silver eyes went wide with shock as she saw the blood spreading across the polished floor, She had lived for 3 centuries and witnessed countless deaths, but something about this moment froze. Marcus tried to speak, but only managed a wet cough that sent more blood spilling from his lips, He had seen enough combat wounds to know this was bad, maybe fatal, His vision was already getting dark around the edges. The princess caught him as he started to collapse, her hands pressed against his wound, trying to stop the bleeding. But human anatomy was different from Catherine. She didn't know where to apply pressure or how to help. Then their blood mixed and everything changed. Catherine telepathy worked through biological connection, Skin contact allowed surface thoughts to pass between individuals, but blood contact was something else. Entirely, something deeper and more profound, Velithas gasped. As Marcus's consciousness flooded into her mind through the blood contact, she felt everything, his fear, yes, but also his absolute certainty that jumping in front of that blade had been the right choice, his conviction that her life mattered more than his own, not because she was royalty or because of politics, but simply because she was a person, and he was in a position to save her. For 300 years, Velithas had been trained in emotional control and telepathic discipline, Catherines prided themselves on rational thought and careful consideration, Emotion was something to be acknowledged and managed, never allowed to run wild. But Marcus's mind was pure human emotion, raw and unfiltered. An overwhelming, she felt his determination like a physical force, his stubborn human refusal to accept that death was inevitable, his desperate clinging to consciousness because giving up wasn't in his nature. She felt memories flash past, Marcus as a child refusing to quit a race even after falling, Marcus in military training, pushing past exhaustion because stopping wasn't an option, Marcus holding a friend's hand in a medical bay and promising that everything would be okay, even when it wasn't. This was what humanity was, she realized with sudden clarity, not weak or primitive, but burning with an intensity that her long-lived species had forgotten, humans lived fast and died young, but they lived with a passion that illuminated everything they touched. Marcus's heart was failing, she could feel it struggling, feel his consciousness starting to slip away into darkness, the medical teams were rushing toward them, but they would be too late, human bodies were so fragile, so quick to break. Velithas made a decision that would change everything. She opened her mind fully and reached into Marcus with her telepathy, found the core of his consciousness. As it flickered and dimmed, and then she did something forbidden, something her people only did once in their long lives. She bonded with him. Life force flowed from her into him, not physical energy, but something deeper, the finde psychic essence that sustained Catherine consciousness, It poured through the blood connection and wrapped around Marcus's failing systems like threads of light. The medical bay sensors screamed as impossible readings flooded their displays. Human vital signs that should have flatlined were stabilizing, Catherine telepathic signatures where there should be none, two consciousnesses becoming intertwined in a way that should only happen between Catherine mates. Marcus's eyes opened wide and met Velithas' silver gaze, he could feel her now, feel her shock and determination and the overwhelming sense that she had just done something that could never be undone around them. The chaos of the assassination attempt continued, but neither of them noticed, they were locked in a moment of perfect connection, human and Catherine, dying and eternal, merged into something new. Marcus tried to speak, to ask what she had done, but darkness took him before the words could form. The last thing he felt before consciousness fled was her voice in his mind, not words exactly, but meaning that bypassed language entirely. You chose to save me, human, she told him through the bond. So I choose to save you back. Then medical teams were pulling them apart, and Marcus knew nothing more. Marcus woke to the sound of machines and voices speaking in hushed tones. Comma languages, both human and alien, mixing together in a way that made his head hurt. Comma, everything hurt. Actually, comma, his chest felt like someone had set fire to it from the inside, and his thoughts were scattered and confused like puzzle pieces dumped on a floor. He opened his eyes slowly and found himself staring at a ceiling that glowed with soft blue light, comma, not Earth technology, comma. This was alien medical equipment, and judging by the Kethran script flowing across holographic displays, he was in their section of the medical bay. You are awake, a voice said, and Marcus turned his head to see Princess Velaise sitting beside his bed, comma. She looked different, somehow, comma, tired, maybe, comma, though he hadn't thought beings who lived for millennia could look tired. What happened? Marcus managed to croak out, comma. His throat was dry, and his voice sounded rough even to his own ears. You saved my life, Velaise said quietly, and I saved yours, but the method I used has created complications. Marcus tried to sit up, but his body protested violently, and he fell back against the medical bed with a groan, comma. What kind of complications? Velaise was silent for a long moment, and Marcus realized he could feel something from her, comma, not thoughts exactly, but emotions, comma, worry and guilt, and something else. He couldn't quite identify, comma. It was like having someone else's feelings sitting in the back of his mind. I bonded with you, she said finally. It is a psychic connection that my people create. Only once in our lives, comma, typically with chosen mates, comma. The bond is permanent and allows us to share emotions and sometimes surface thoughts. Marcus stared at her, comma, trying to process what she was saying, comma. But we just met, comma. I'm human, comma. How is that even possible? It should not be possible, another voice said, and Marcus looked over to see an older Kethran male entering the room, comma. His skin had a deeper blue tone, and his crystalline crown was more elaborate than Velathas', comma. I am Healer Corvin, and I have studied the bond between you and the princess for 3 days while you recovered, comma. It is unlike anything in our medical records. 3 days? Marcus said with shock. You nearly died. Corvin continued. The phase blade cut through major blood vessels and damaged several organs, comma. By all accounts, you should be dead, comma. The princess's intervention saved you, but it also changed you in ways we are still discovering. Marcus looked at his hands and noticed for the first time that his skin seemed to have a very faint shimmer to it, comma, barely visible, but definitely not normal human biology, comma. What did you do to me? I poured my life force into you through the bond, Velathas said, and her voice carried a weight of guilt. I did not think, comma, I only knew that. I could not let you die after you sacrificed yourself for me, comma. But the bond, comma, it is causing problems. What kind of problems? Marcus asked, though he had a feeling he wasn't going to like the answer. Vela they stood and walked to the window, comma, looking out at the stars beyond. Concordia Station, comma. The Kethran court is demanding that I dissolve the bond, comma. They say it is inappropriate, comma, that bonding with an alien, comma, especially a human, comma, brings shame to the royal family, comma. They want me to either break the connection or accept exile. Marcus felt a spike of alarm and realized with a start that the emotion was coming from her through the bond, comma, not from himself, comma. Can you break it? He asked. Yes, Corvin said. But the process is extremely painful and dangerous for both parties, comma. There is a 30% chance of permanent telepathic damage to the princes and a 70% chance of death for you, comma. Your human neurology is not equipped to survive the dissolution of a bond it was never meant to have. So I trapped you, Marcus said, looking at Velathas' back. I saved your life and ended up trapping you in a bond you never wanted. She turned and her silver eyes met his, comma. Marcus felt a surge of emotion through the connection, comma, complex and layered in ways he couldn't fully understand, comma. You did not trap me, she said firmly. I chose the bond, I knew what it meant, and I did it anyway. But your people, your family, Marcus started to say, my people have forgotten what it means to truly live. Valathas interrupted, and there was passion in her voice that Marcus hadn't heard before. We exist for thousands of years, but we do not feel, we observe and calculate and make rational decisions, but we have lost the fire that makes life worth living. She walked back to his bedside and sat down, reaching out to take his hand, The moment their skin touched, the bond strengthened, and Marcus felt the full force of what she was trying to tell him through the connection. He felt what she had experienced when his consciousness flooded into her mind, She had felt him living in a way Catherine's have forgotten how to live, burning bright and fast and refusing to give up, even when logic said death was certain. Your people are dying, Marcus said with sudden understanding. Not physically, but spiritually, You have so much time that you have forgotten how to use it. Valatha smiled, and it was the first real smile Marcus had seen on her face, Yes, she said simply. And when I felt your mind, you're desperate, clinging to life, your absolute refusal to accept defeat, I realized what we have lost. The door to the medical bay opened and Ambassador Richardson entered with 2 other human diplomats, All 3 looked exhausted and worried. Marcus, Richardson said with relief. Thank God you are awake, we need to talk. Over the next hour, Marcus learned just how complicated his situation had become, The assassination attempt had been traced to the Vryn Collective, a faction that opposed humanity's admission to the coalition, They had hoped that killing Princess Valathas would destabilize the Catherine Empire and prevent them from sponsoring Earth's application. Instead, Marcus's sacrifice had created the opposite effect, The galaxy was talking about the human who threw himself in front of a blade to save an alien princess, Some species were intrigued, others were dismissive, but everyone was paying attention to humanity. Now, the Catherine Emperor has summoned both of you, Richardson said carefully. He wants to meet the human who bonded with his daughter. Marcus looked at Valathas and felt her nervousness through the connection, What do you think will happen? He asked her quietly. I do not know. She admitted, my father is traditional, but he is also pragmatic, He may see the political value in our bond, or he may demand its dissolution to preserve our family's honor. I won't let them hurt you, Marcus said, and meant it, The bond had created something between them, Not love exactly, but a connection that felt deeper than anything he had experienced before. You cannot stop an empire, Valathas said gently, but Marcus felt her gratitude. Through the bond healer, Corvin cleared his throat, There is something else you both should know, he said, and his tone was serious. The bond is affecting you in unexpected ways, Marcus, your DNA is beginning to change. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine, What do you mean changing? Catherine genetic material is integrating with your human cells, Corvin explained. The bond is not just psychic, it is physical as well, You are becoming something new, Neither fully human nor Catherine, but a hybrid of both species. Is that even possible? Richardson asked with shock. It should not be, Corvin said. But human biology is more adaptable than we anticipated, Your species evolved on a world that constantly tried to kill you, and you developed the ability to adapt rapidly to new threats, That adaptability is allowing your body to accept and integrate Catherine DNA in ways that would kill most other species. Marcus looked at his hands again, at the faint shimmer under his skin, What does this mean for me? We do not know yet, Corvin admitted. The preliminary tests show that you are developing limited telepathic sensitivity and enhanced healing capabilities, You also appear to be more resistant to environmental hazards than either species alone. Valathas squeezed Marcus's hand, and he felt her wonder through the bond, You are becoming a bridge between our peoples, she said softly. The first of something entirely new. Before Marcus could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the medical bay. Corvin rushed to a console and his expression darkened as he read the display. "What is it?" Marcus asked. "Your wound," Corvin said. Slowly, "The one that should be healed, it is glowing." Marcus looked down at his chest and saw that beneath the medical gown, his skin was indeed glowing with the same blue bioluminescence as Catherine's skin, but it was concentrated around the scar from the phase blade, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. "That is not supposed to happen," Valathas whispered, and through the bond, Marcus felt her fear and fascination. Marcus reached up and touched the glowing scar. It was warm but not painful, "I guess we are going to have a lot to explain to your father," he said with a weak attempt at humor. Tuss laughed despite the situation, "Yes," she agreed. "I suspect this meeting will be very interesting." Marcus closed his eyes and tried to process everything that had happened, 3 days ago. He had been a simple security officer, now he was bonded to an alien princess, transforming into a hybrid species, and about to face an emperor who could decide his fate with a word. Through the bond he felt Valathas' steady presence, her quiet strength and her determination to protect him just as he had protected her. Whatever came next, they would face it together, that was what the bond meant, what his sacrifice had created. Marcus opened his eyes and met Valathas' gaze, "So," he said, "when do we meet your father?" The Imperial chamber aboard the Catherine flagship was designed to make visitors feel small. And Marcus definitely felt small as he walked beside Valathas through doors that stood 30 feet high and opened into a room that could have held a stadium. Emperor Kethver sat on a throne of crystalline structures that seemed to grow from the floor itself, his skin glowed with deep blue light, and his crown was a magnificent array of crystal formations that marked him as the oldest living member of the Catherine royal line, he had ruled for over 2,000 years, and his silver eyes held the weight of ages. Marcus kept his back straight and his chin up, even though every instinct told him to bow or kneel or show deference to this being, who could probably have him killed with a gesture, but he was representing humanity here, and humans didn't grovel, not even in front of emperors. "So," Kethver said, and his voice was like distant thunder, "this is the human who bonded with my daughter." "Father," Valathas began, but the emperor raised one hand and she fell silent. I'm speaking to the human," Kethver said, and his attention focused fully on Marcus, through the bond. Marcus felt Valathas' nervousness and he tried to send back reassurance, even though he had no idea how to do that. "Your Majesty," Marcus said, and his voice was steady, even though his heart was pounding. "I am Marcus, Chun of Earth, security officer for the human diplomatic delegation. You are more than that now," Kethver said. "You are bonded to my daughter, you carry Catherine DNA in your cells, you are becoming something that has never existed before." Marcus nodded slowly, "The doctors have explained the changes, I am sorry if my actions have caused problems for your family." Kethver stood and descended from his throne, he was even taller than Valathas, easily 8 feet, and his presence is to fill the entire chamber, "Do you understand what you have done, human?" he asked. "The bond my daughter created with you is sacred among our people, it is meant to join two Catherines for the remainder of their lives, typically thousands of years. I understand that it is permanent," Marcus said, carefully, "and I understand that many of your people believe it is inappropriate." "Inappropriate?" Kethver repeated, and there was something like amusement in his tone. "That is a very diplomatic word, the court believes it is an abomination, They say that my daughter has degraded herself by bonding with a being who will be dead in less than a century." Marcus felt anger flare in his chest, not at the emperor, but at the casual dismissal of human life, "We may not live as long as Catherines," he said, and his voice had an edge to it. But we live fully, we do not waste our time because we know it is limited. Kethver's eyes narrowed, and the room seemed to grow colder. You dare speak to me with such tone? Father, please. Velithus stepped forward. Marcus meant no disrespect, but Marcus held the Emperor's gaze, I meant every word with respect, Your Majesty, but I will not apologize for being human, Your daughter felt something in my mind when we bonded, something that your people have lost, the understanding that life is precious because it ends. For a long moment the Emperor said nothing, and Marcus wondered if he had just gotten himself and possibly all of humanity thrown out of the coalition, Then Kethver laughed, a sound like bells ringing in the distance. You have courage, human, the Emperor said, or perhaps foolishness, among my people. They are often difficult to distinguish. He walked closer to Marcus and placed one large hand on his shoulder, Marcus felt a surge of telepathic contact, not invasive, but searching, and through the bond he felt Velithus tense. Then Kethvar pulled his hand back and looked at his daughter with an expression that Marcus couldn't read, You were right, he said quietly. This one burns. Father? Velithus asked. I felt his mind through the contact. Kethvar explained, and I understand now why you bonded with him, There is an intensity to human consciousness that we have lost, perhaps that we never had. He turned back to Marcus, The court demands that the bond be dissolved or that my daughter be exiled, I have a different proposal. Marcus exchanged a glance with Velithus and felt her hope mixed with caution through their connection. The Vryn Collective attempted to assassinate my daughter. Kethver continued. They oppose humanity's admission to the coalition, and they are growing bolder in their aggression along our border worlds. I want to know what they are planning. You want us to investigate? Velithus asked. I want you to prove that your bond has value, Kethver said bluntly. Prove that this connection between human and Kethryn creates something stronger than either species. Alone, if you succeed, the court will accept the bond and humanity will have the Kethryn Empire's full support for coalition membership. And if we fail? Marcus asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. Then the bond will be dissolved, my daughter will marry a suitable Kethryn noble, and humanity's application will be rejected. Kethver said without emotion. Those are the terms. Marcus felt Velithus' determination through the bond, She was ready to accept, ready to prove that she had made the right choice, We accept, Marcus said before she could speaketh. Nodded, You have 1 month. There is a border station called Outpost Tavikinor, where Vryn activity has been increasing, Start your investigation there. As they left the Imperial Chamber, Marcus and Velithus walked in silence through the corridors of the flagship, other. Kethryn stared at them as they passed, some with curiosity, others with obvious disdain. You should not have spoken to my father that way, Velithus said finally, but through the bond Marcus felt that she wasn't really angry. Someone needed to, Marcus replied. Your people see humans as short-lived primitives, but we have survived things that would have destroyed species with better technology and longer lifespans. I know, Velithus said softly. That is what I felt when our minds touched, that stubborn human refusal to accept defeat. They reached the quarters that had been assigned to them, shared quarters, because the bond made separation uncomfortable for both parties, Marcus still wasn't sure how he felt about that. Over the next week they prepared for the mission, and Marcus began learning just how much the bond was changing him. He could feel Velithus' presence, constantly now, a warm awareness in the back of his mind, when they were close. The connection strengthened, and he could sense her surface thoughts. More importantly, he was developing abilities that no human should have, limited telepathy that let him sense strong emotions. From people nearby, enhanced healing that closed cuts and bruises in hours instead of days, increased resistance to toxins and radiation. The human medical team was fascinated and terrified in equal measure, Dr. Sarah Chung, no relation despite the shared last name, ran tests constantly and shook her head at the results. Your DNA is rewriting itself, she told Marcus during one examination, not replacing your human genes, but adding Catherine sequences alongside them, it is like your body is running two different operating systems simultaneously and somehow making them work together. Is it dangerous? Marcus asked. We have no idea. Sarah admitted. You are the first human Catherine hybrid, there is no baseline to compare you to, but so far you seem healthy, healthier than you should be actually. Marcus also began training with Valathas, learning to use the bond in combat situations, she taught him Catherine martial techniques while he showed her human tactics, together. They developed a fighting style that used the bond to coordinate their movements with perfect timing. You think differently than Catherine's, Valathas observed during one sparring session. You make decisions faster, more instinctively. Humans have to, Marcus explained. We don't have time to carefully consider every option, We evolved to think fast and act faster or we died. And that is your strength, Valathas said. Combined with Catherine's strategic thinking through the bond, we can anticipate threats before they develop and respond immediately. They arrived at Outpost Tavaikana 2 weeks into their investigation, The station was a massive structure orbiting a gas giant in a system near Vryn Space, It served as both a trading post and a military observation point. The station commander was a grizzled Catherine named Vormak, who looked at Marcus with obvious skepticism, So the Emperor sends me a bonded pair to investigate Vryn activities, he said. A princess and a human, I am sure you will be very effective. We will do our job. Valathas said coldly. You will provide us with access to station records and intelligence reports. Vormak sneered but complied, over the next week. Marcus and Valathas reviewed data and interviewed station personnel, The Vryn had been probing the border, testing defenses, but there was something else happening, patterns in their movements that suggested coordination beyond simple military exercises. Marcus was reviewing surveillance footage when he noticed something odd, Vila, he called, and she came to stand beside him, through the bond. He felt her attention focus. What am I looking at? She asked. This Vryn freighter. Marcus pointed at the screen. It is docked here 6 times in the last month, always at odd hours, always with minimal crew. Valathas' eyes widened, That is not a standard shipping pattern. They pulled up cargo manifests and found nothing unusual, Standard trade goods, approved by station security, but Marcus's instincts were screaming that something was wrong. We need to search that ship the next time it docks, he said. On what grounds? Valathas asked. The manifests are clean. Marcus grinned, Leave that to me, humans are very good at finding probable cause. When the Vryn freighter docked 3 days later, Marcus and Velias were waiting. With a security team, the Vryn captain was a being that looked like a bipedal lizard with iridescent scales and multiple eyes. This is harassment, the captain hissed. My cargo is legal, my permits are valid. Then you won't mind if we take a look, Marcus said pleasantly. They found it hidden in a false compartment beneath the cargo bay, a device unlike anything in Coalition databases, crystalline structures connected to what looked like organic neural tissue, all pulsing with a sickly green light. What is this? Vormak demanded. Valathas touched the device, and Marcus felt her horror through the bond, It is a weapon, she said quietly, designed to broadcast telepathic pain across vast distances. It would paralyze any species with natural telepathy. Marcus felt cold. as the implications hit him, most coalition species were telepathic to some degree, a weapon like this could cripple entire fleets, entire civilizations. How many of these have been brought through? He asked the Vrin captain. The captain said nothing, but Marcus didn't need words, He could see the truth in the being's eyes, There were more, many more. We need to contact the Emperor, Valathas said. The Vrin are preparing for war. Before Marcus could respond, alarms started blaring and the station's lights flickered, We have a problem, Vomak said grimly. Multiple Vrin ships just dropped out of hyperspace around the station. They know we found their weapon. Marcus and Valathas locked eyes, and through the bond they shared a moment of perfect understanding, They were about to face their first real test. How many ships? Marcus asked. 20, Vormak said. Against our 8, we are outnumbered and outgunned. Marcus smiled grimly, Then we better not fight fair, he said. The Vrin ships formed a blockade around Outpost Tavikana, and their weapons were charging, Marcus could see it on the tactical display in the station's command center, 20 warships, against 8 defenders and a civilian station full of people who would die if this went wrong. They are hailing us, Vormak said, and his voice was tight with tension. A Vrin commander appeared on the view screen, This one was larger than the freighter captain, with darker scales and eyes that glowed with a predatory intelligence, Outpost Tavik, Nakama, you will surrender the device you discovered and hand over all personnel involved in its seizure, If you comply, we will allow the station to survive. And if we refuse? Vormak asked, though everyone knew the answer. Then we will destroy the station and claim you attacked us first, the Vrin commander said with a smile that showed too many teeth. The coalition is weak, they will believe whatever story we tell them. The transmission ended, and Vormak turned to his tactical officers, all ships to battle stations, prepare to evacuate the civilian sections. Wait, Marcus said, and everyone looked at him, through the bond he felt. Valathas' curiosity mixed with worry, she didn't know what he was planning. We cannot wait, Vormak snapped. We are outnumbered, and they have us surrounded. Exactly, Marcus said. And he was grinning in that way that humans did when they had a terrible idea that might just work, They think they have already won, They are not expecting us to attack. Attack? One of the Catherine officers said with disbelief. That would be suicide. Marcus walked to the tactical display and started pointing at ships, These 3 Vrin cruisers are holding position near the station's main docking arm, If we decouple the arm and use the station's thrusters to push it into their formation, it will disrupt their battle line. The docking arm is full of civilian ships and cargo. Another officer protested, which is why they won't expect us to weaponize it, Marcus said. And while they are dealing with that, our ships hit them from behind, fast and hard, we don't try to win, we just need to create enough chaos to buy time for a distress signal to reach the nearest coalition fleet. Vormak stared at Marcus like he had suggested setting himself on fire, That is the most insane plan I have ever heard. It's very human, Valathas said, and through the bond Marcus felt her pride mixing with terror, She knew this plan was crazy, but she also knew it might work. Do you have a better idea? Marcus asked. Vormak looked at the tactical display, at the Vrin ships tightening their formation, at the countdown timer showing how long until their weapons were fully charged. He didn't have a better idea, and they all knew it. Get the civilians off the docking arm. Vormak ordered. You have 10 minutes. The next 10 minutes were controlled chaos, automated systems evacuated civilian ships through emergency tunnels while station engineers prepared the docking arm for separation. Marcus and Valathas ran to the nearest hangar where a small Catherine shuttle waited. You are not going out there, Vormak said as they passed him in the corridor. Someone needs to manually pilot the docking arm into their formation. Marcus said. The automated systems are not precise enough. Then I will send one of my pilots, Vormak argued. Your pilots are Catherine, Marcus said. They think like Catherine's, they will hesitate when it comes time to do something crazy, I'm human, crazy is what we do best. Vormak opened his mouth to argue, but Velethos cut him off, He is right, and I will be with him, through the bond we can coordinate. Better than any two separate pilots. They reached the hangar, and Marcus climbed into the shuttle's pilot seat while Velethos took the co-pilot station, through the bond. He felt her determination and fear, and something else, trust, She trusted him completely, even though this plan was insane. The shuttle launched and maneuvered toward the docking arm, Other ships were fleeing the area as station crews finished the evacuation, Marcus brought the shuttle alongside the arms control module, and Velethos used her telepathy to interface with the station systems. Separation in 30 seconds, she said. Marcus looked at the Vrin ships on his display, They were holding formation, confident and complacent, because they thought they had already won, This is going to be loud, he said. Docking arms separated with a shudder that Marcus could feel even through the vacuum of space, Massive thrusters built to adjust the station's orbit fired at full power, pushing the multi-kilometer structure toward the Vrin formation like a massive battering ram. They are noticing, Velethos said unnecessarily as alarms started blaring across Vrin communication channels. The Vrin ships tried to scatter, but they had been holding too close a formation, The docking arms smashed into two cruisers, crushing their hulls like tin cans, Other ships collided with each other, trying to avoid the debris. Now, Marcus shouted into the communication channel. The 8 Catherine ships surged forward from their defensive positions, their weapons firing as they dove into the chaos, Vrin ships were trying to reorganize, but the battle space had become a nightmare of debris and friendly fire. Marcus pushed the shuttle into the middle of the formation, weaving between Vrin ships and using the wreckage as cover, What are you doing? Velethos asked with alarm. Getting their attention, Marcus said, and fired the shuttle's small weapons at the nearest Vrin cruiser, the shots barely scratched the shields, but it worked, The cruiser turned toward them. Marcus, that ship will destroy us, Velethos said. Not if we are smart, Marcus replied, and pushed the shuttle into a dive toward the gas giant below. The Vrin cruiser followed, its weapons charging, and Marcus felt Velethos' terror through the bond, but also her absolute trust, she believed he knew what he was doing. Even if she couldn't see the plan, the gas giant's atmosphere was churning with storms that created electromagnetic interference. Sensors became unreliable, targeting systems struggled, Marcus pushed the shuttle deeper into the upper atmosphere where the hydrogen pressure was starting to affect their shields. Marcus, Velethos warned. I know, he said, and suddenly cut all power except life support. The shuttle went dark and started falling into the atmosphere, on their sensors. The Vrin cruiser was searching for them, scanning the storms. Weapons ready. They cannot find us, Velethos said with wonder. The interference is blocking their sensors. And they are about to have a bigger problem, Marcus said, pointing at the display. The Vrin cruiser had followed them too deep into the atmosphere, its shields were starting to fail under the pressure, The captain realized too late and tried to pull up, but the giant's gravity had them now. Marcus restarted the shuttle systems and used their smaller size and better maneuverability to escape the gravity. Well, while the Vrin cruiser struggled and failed and finally broke apart under the atmospheric pressure. One down, Marcus said. 19 to go. Velethos replied, but through the bond, he felt her amazement, she was seeing how humans fought, not with overwhelming power, but with cleverness and audacity. They climbed back toward the station and found the battle had turned into a confused mess of ships, trying to establish firing solutions through debris fields, The Catherine ships were holding their own, but barely. Then Marcus saw an opportunity. One of the Vrin ships had been damaged in the collision and was venting atmosphere, its shields flickering. Vila, can you scan that ship? He asked. She focused her telepathy through the bond, and Marcus felt her consciousness reach. Out, there are 43 crew members aboard, Most are near the reactor core, trying to repair the damage. Can you tell them something through telepathy? Marcus asked. At this range, yes, but it will be painful for both of us, Velathar's warned. Do it, tell them their reactor is going critical, make them panic. Valathar is concentrated, and Marcus felt the psychic energy building through their bond, Then she released it in a focused blast of telepathic communication, warning, false but convincing on the view screen. They watched the Vrin ship suddenly launch all its escape pods, the crew abandoning ship in a panic, the captain must have realized it was a trick, but too late. Half the crew was already gone. That was brilliant, Valathar said with something like joy in her voice. Marcus was about to respond when alarms blared in the shuttle, something was wrong, very wrong, His vision blurred, and he tasted blood. Marcus! Valathar shouted. He looked down and saw that his chest was glowing again, The scar from the phase blade was pulsing with brilliant blue light, but it wasn't just glowing, it was changing, spreading across his skin in patterns that looked almost like Catherine bioluminescence. What is happening? He managed to gasp. The bond, Valathar said with horror and fascination. The stress of combat, the telepathic energy I channel, it is accelerating your transformation. Pain lanced through Marcus's body as his cells rewrote themselves, He could feel his DNA changing, Catherine. Genetic material integrating faster than before, his nervous system adapting to handle telepathic energy. I need to get you back to the station, Valathar said, reaching for the controls. No, Marcus forced out through gritted teeth. We finish this first. Through the pain, he could feel something else, power, his hybrid physiology was not just adapting, it was becoming stronger, He could sense the Vrin ships now, feel the electromagnetic signatures of their reactors, track their movements through space like a sixth sense. Marcus, your life signs are critical, Valathar said. I'm fine. He insisted and proved it by taking back the controls, The pain was fading, replaced by a strange clarity, He could process information faster, react quicker, think more clearly than ever before. You are not fine, you are glowing like a star, Valathar said. But through the bond, he felt her wonder, she was watching him become something. New Vrin ship locked weapons on their shuttle, and Marcus reacted without thinking. He pushed the shuttle through a maneuver that should have torn it apart, dodging the blast by centimeters and coming around to fire on the attackers' exposed engine pods. The Vrin ship exploded and debris rained across the battle space. How did you do that? Valathar whispered. I don't know, Marcus admitted. I just felt where the ship would be and where we needed to be, and my body moved. More Vrin ships were breaking off now, The battle was going badly for them, They had expected an easy victory and instead found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow the rules. Then the cavalry arrived, 6 Coalition cruisers dropped out of hyperspace, responding to the distress signal, The Vrin commander saw them coming and ordered a retreat, His ships broke formation and jumped to hyperspace, abandoning the battle outpost Havoc and had survived. Marcus brought the shuttle back to the hangar, and when he climbed out, he collapsed, his body finally giving out after the transformation and the stress of combat, The last thing he saw before darkness took him was Valathar's catching him, her face filled with concern and pride. You did it, she said through the bond. You showed them what humans can do. Then consciousness fled, and Marcus dreamed of stars and fire and the feeling of becoming something more than he had been Marcus. Woke to find himself in a medical bay again, but this time it was different, The room was filled with scientists and doctors from a dozen species, all studying him like he was the most fascinating thing in the galaxy, which he supposed he was. He is awake, someone said, and the crowd parted to reveal Valatha sitting beside his bed, She looked exhausted, but her eyes lit up when she saw him conscious. How long? Marcus asked. 5 days. She said quietly. You pushed your body too far during the battle, The transformation accelerated beyond what anyone thought possible. Marcus looked at his hands and saw that his skin now had a permanent shimmer to it, faint blue bioluminescence that pulsed in time with his heartbeat, He was more Catherine than before, but still undeniably human, Something new. The galaxy is talking about you, Valatha said with a small smile. Footage of the battle was broadcast across Coalition space, They are calling you the Unkillable because you survived hard vacuum when your shuttle shields failed for a moment. Marcus blinked, That happened? You do not remember? A human doctor asked, Dr. Sarah Chun stepped forward with a tablet full of data. Your suit was breached for approximately 43 seconds, Any normal human would have died instantly, Instead, your hybrid physiology adapted in real time, Your cells protected themselves by entering a form of suspended animation. I survived space, Marcus said, slowly trying to process that. You survived space, You survived a phase blade wound that should have killed you, You bonded with an alien species and your DNA rewrote itself, Sarah said with a mixture of professional fascination and personal amazement. Marcus, you are proving that humans are far more adaptable than anyone in the galaxy suspected. Over the next week, Marcus learned just how much had changed while he was unconscious, The footage from Outpost Tavikanar had spread like wildfire across coalition networks. Species that had dismissed humanity as weak and primitive were reassessing their opinions. The Vrin had been exposed, their plan to deploy psychic weapons throughout Coalition space was now public knowledge, telepathic species were terrified and looking for solutions, and the Coalition was looking at Earth with new interest because humans, with their lack of natural telepathy, were immune to the Vrin. Weapons Ambassador Richardson visited Marcus in the medical bay with news that made Marcus's head spin, The Coalition wants to fast-track humanity's admission, Richardson explained, and they want to establish a joint research program with Earth, They need our help developing a defense against the psychic weapons. How can we help? Marcus asked. We are not telepathic. Exactly, Richardson said. That is your advantage, human. Neurology processes information differently. The Vrin weapon works by overloading telepathic channels with artificial pain signals, but human brains don't have those channels. Logilithas leaned forward, The researchers believe that your hybrid neurology might be the key. She said, You have both human and Catherine neural structures. If we can map how your brain filters and processes telepathic information, we might be able to create artificial filters for other species. You want to use me as a template. Marcus said, We want to save billions of lives, Catherine scientist said, stepping forward. The Vrin have at least a dozen of these weapons already deployed, They could activate them at any time, Every telepathic species in the Coalition is vulnerable. Marcus looked at Velathez and through the bond felt her worry for him, but also her hope for her people, What would it involve? He asked. The scientist explained, and Marcus felt his stomach drop, They wanted to connect him to the Catherine telepathic network, expose him to a controlled burst from a captured Vrin weapon, and map how his hybrid brain processed and filtered the signal. It will be painful, the scientist admitted, and there is risk of permanent neural damage or death. How much risk? Marcus asked. 40% chance of severe injury, 20% chance of death. The scientist said bluntly. Through the bond, Marcus felt Velatha's immediate rejection of the plan, She was already preparing to argue, to forbid it, But Marcus spoke first. I'll do it, he said. No, Velatha said, standing up. I will not allow you to risk your life again. You don't get to decide that, Marcus said, gently taking her hand. This is my choice. You almost died twice already because of me, Velatha said, and her voice was thick with emotion. I cannot lose you. Through the bond, Marcus sent her everything he was feeling, his determination, his understanding that this was bigger than both of them, his absolute conviction that saving billions of lives was worth the risk. You bled your life force into me when I was dying, he said softly. Now it's my turn to bleed for something that matters. Vala closed her eyes and tears ran down her face. Crystalline drops that caught the light, I bonded with you because you were willing to die for a stranger, she whispered. But I did not expect to fall in love with someone so determined to do it again. Marcus pulled her close, and through the bond, they shared a moment of perfect understanding, love and fear and determination, all mixed together. I'm not planning to die, he said. I'm planning to survive, that is what humans do best. Preparation took 3 days, engineers built a specialized chamber that could replicate the Vrin weapon's effects in a controlled environment. Doctors from Earth and a dozen other worlds collaborated on monitoring equipment, and volunteers lined up to help. When Marcus learned that other humans had volunteered to be test subjects, he was shocked, Why would they do that? He asked her, Sarah. Because you showed them what humanity could accomplish, she explained. Because thousands of humans saw the footage of you saving that station and decided they wanted to be part of something bigger. We may not live as long as other species, Marcus, but we can make the time we have count for something. The Emperor himself came to witness the experiment, Kethver looked at Marcus with an expression that held respect now instead of skepticism. My daughter chose well, he said simply. Whatever happens today, know that the Kethran Empire honors your courage. Marcus was strapped into a chair in the center of the test chamber, neural sensors covered his skull and Kethran. Telepaths surrounded him, ready to link him into their collective consciousness, Valithus stood beside him, her hand in his. I will be with you through the bond, she said. You will not face this alone. Ready? The lead scientist asked. Marcus took a deep breath and nodded. Telepathic network opened, and suddenly Marcus could feel thousands of Kethran minds touching his consciousness, It was overwhelming, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure, and then the weapon-activated pain exploded through the telepathic channels, artificial agony designed to paralyze and destroy, Marcus felt it slam into his hybrid mind like a tsunami of suffering, and for a moment he thought it would break him, but then his human neurology kicked in. Humans had spent millions of years dealing with pain, learning to process it, compartmentalize it, push through it when survival demanded, Marcus's brain took the psychic assault and did what human brains did best, it adapted. He could feel the weapon signal now, see its structure in his mind's eye, It was broadcasting on specific frequencies. The telepathic species were hardwired to receive, but Marcus's hybrid neurology gave him something unique. He could perceive those frequencies without being overwhelmed by them. I can filter it, he gasped through the pain. I can feel the difference between the weapon signal and normal telepathy. Around him, the scientists were frantically recording data as Marcus's brain created a natural firewall against the psychic assault, his neurons were building new pathways, establishing protocols for handling telepathic information without succumbing to weaponized signals. Through the bond, Valathaz was with him, sharing the pain, but also helping him Process it, her ancient Kethran consciousness combined with his adaptive human mind to create something unprecedented. Test lasted 5 minutes that felt like 5 hours, when they finally shut down the weapon, Marcus collapsed gasping. His body covered in sweat and his mind feeling bruised and battered. But he was alive, and more importantly, he had done it. Did you get what you needed? He asked weakly. More than we hoped for, the lead scientist said with awe in his voice. Your brain created a natural filtering mechanism that we can replicate artificially, with this data. We can build psychic shields that will protect telepathic species from the Vrin weapons. News of the successful test spread across the galaxy. Faster than light, humanity had done it again, taken their weakness and turned it into strength, adapted to a threat that terrified advanced civilizations over. The next month, the Coalition's best engineers worked around the clock to create psychic dampeners based on Marcus's neural patterns, small devices that could be implanted in telepathic beings, allowing them to maintain their natural abilities while filtering out weaponized signals, and humans volunteered by the thousands to help test and refine the technology, they worked alongside Kethrans and Trellic and dozens of other species, building something that could save entire civilizations, the Vrin, seeing their advantage disappear. Tried to launch their weapons in a desperate final strike, but Coalition forces were ready, ships equipped with the new dampeners shrugged off the psychic assault and counterattacked, the Vrin fleet was destroyed in a battle that lasted only hours. The war that could have destroyed the Coalition ended before it truly began, all because one human had been willing to throw himself in front of a blade. Marcus stood with Velathaz on the observation deck of a Coalition cruiser, watching as the Kethran Empire formally sponsored humanity's admission to the galactic community. Earth ships were arriving, bringing diplomats and scientists and explorers eager to see the stars. You changed everything, Velathaz said softly. We changed everything, Marcus corrected. You were the one who chose to bond with me, who saw potential in humanity. When everyone else saw primitives, she leaned against him, and through the bond he felt her contentment and love. My father wants to know when we will marry, she said. Marcus laughed, Is that a proposal? Among my people the bond is the marriage, Velathaz explained. But I understand humans have their own ceremonies. Then let's do both, Marcus said. A human wedding and a Kethran bonding celebration. Show the galaxy what it means when two species truly come together. The wedding 3 months later was attended by representatives from every Coalition species, Emperor Kethvar himself officiated the Kethran portion, while Ambassador Richardson handled the human ceremony, It was a symbol of everything that had changed, human and alien, primitive and advanced, all coming together as equals. Marcus and Velathaz stood before the assembled guests, their hands clasped and the bond between them visible as a soft glow where their skin touched. I was raised to believe that emotions should be controlled, Velathaz said in her vows. That passion was something to be managed and contained, But you showed me that feeling deeply is not a weakness, It is the greatest strength any being can possess. I was taught that humans were just one small species among many, Marcus said. But you showed me that what matters is not how long we live or how advanced our technology is, What matters is what we choose to do with the time we have, and who we choose to stand beside. Emperor Kethvar placed his hands on both their heads, a Kethran blessing for newly bonded pairs, You are neither human nor Kethran now, he said. You are something new, a bridge between worlds, may your bond endure across the ages. 5 years later, Marcus and Velathaz stood in the same spot, but this time they held a child between them, a daughter named Terra, who was the first natural-born human Kethran. Hybrid, she had her mother's silver eyes, but her father's warm skin tone, Her bioluminescence was softer than full Catherine's, but brighter than Marcus's, and she had inherited the best of both species, human adaptability and emotional intensity combined with Catherine longevity and telepathic gifts around them. Other hybrid children played, dozens now, children of humans who had bonded with Catherine's and other telepathic species, a new generation that would grow up knowing no difference between alien and human, just people. She will live for thousands of years, Valathai said, watching Terra play long enough to see humanity spread across the galaxy, long enough to witness wonders we cannot imagine. And she will live every day fully, Marcus added, because her human side will never let her forget that time is precious. Through the bond, they shared a moment of perfect understanding, two beings from different worlds who had found something extraordinary in each other. Emperor Kethver approached with a smile, Your daughter will need teachers, he said. Catherine instructors to help her understand her telepathic gifts, and human teachers to help her understand her emotions. Marcus added, She will need both. Kethver agreed. Just as the galaxy now needs both humanity's fire and our wisdom, You truly changed everything, Marcus-chan, you bled for an alien princess, and in doing so, you showed us all what it means to be alive. Marcus looked at his daughter, at his wife, at the future, spreading out before them like stars across an infinite sky. No, he said quietly. I just showed up and refused to quit, that is what humans do, We see something worth fighting for, and we don't stop, we don't give up, We don't let death or distance or the impossible stand in our way. He smiled and pulled Valathas close while Terra laughed and chased another hybrid child across the observation deck. I bled for you, Marcus said to Valathas through the bond, and you bled your life force into me, we saved each other, and in doing so, we showed the galaxy that the best things happen when we choose to connect rather than remain apart. That is the human gift, Valathas said. You reminded us all that isolation is death, but connection is life. Far below them, Earth spun in its ancient orbit, still the homeworld of humanity, but no longer their cage. Human ships were exploring the galaxy now, forming bonds with alien species, adapting and thriving and refusing to be limited by what others thought possible. And everywhere they went, humans brought that same stubborn determination, that refusal to quit, that absolute conviction that if something was worth doing, it was worth bleeding forth. Galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly how it should be. Marcus held his family close and looked at the stars, thinking about the path that had brought him here, from a simple security officer to the father of a new species, from someone the galaxy dismissed as someone they could not ignore. He had bled for an alien princess, and no one had expected what followed. But then again, humanity had always specialized in the unexpected. That was what made them human, and that was what would carry them to the stars.